All right, there we go.
Ba-dooba.
June 16th. All right. Wow. First time I've been on camera in a couple of days. I see I have a little tan.
91 today.
Oh, wow. All right.
Well, what do we got going on today? Anything exciting?
I just did a 3-day art show.
Oh, cool.
It's exciting for me.
Very cool. I know last week I was telling you guys that I had a webinar that somebody had reached out to me and asked for. And it's interesting how momentum kicks in.
Mhm.
And right after I got off the call with you guys last Thursday, I get another email from somebody that was on that webinar that wants to put me on another one. So it's really cool. It's like if nothing's happening, nothing starts happening. But as soon as things start happening, more things follow. It's really, really cool. And it's always kind of worked that way. It's like the snowball. You know, the snowball doesn't form till it starts rolling down the mountain. So whatever you got to do to just kick that little snowflake loose and get it rolling, it will get bigger. It will grow as it tumbles down the mountain. That is for sure. So I've noticed there's a lot of stuff going on in the world that may or may not affect your businesses. And I've seen this before many, many times throughout the years. The last time, I think it was around 2008, the big collapse, the big crash, whenever that was, I think it was around 2008. I remember my phone, like my clients rang my phone off the hook and they were telling me about this big disaster. And I hadn't heard of it yet because I don't watch the news. I just kind of live my life and whatever happens, happens. But anyway, they're telling me how bad it is. And I'm like, well, what are your numbers? How has it affected you? And they're like, they couldn't give me any data. And I'm like, it sounds to me like you haven't really been affected yet. So let's talk about a problem when there's a problem. And let's not chase ghosts. Chasing ghosts and shadows can disrupt a business and disrupt your mindset. And I said, you know, let's focus on doing what we do, which is getting you more customers and moving your business. If you stop focusing on that and you focus on a crisis, you know, it's like the whole secret thing. You're going to create a crisis. You're going to jump right into the middle of something that you weren't in before, and you're going to cause bad things to happen all around you. It's like put the blinders on, stay focused on what's happening. And then when there's actually a problem, then we can talk about it. And it was funny. They all went back to work. I never heard from them again. They all just kept doing their thing. And I would talk to other people and they would tell me that, you know, all the people they know are suffering and all this stuff. And I would just say, none of my clients are suffering. And guess what? That made them want to be one of my clients. So it was a really good growth phase for me. That was probably in my internet career, that section of like 2009, 2010, that was one of my biggest growth moves. It was when all hell was breaking loose. And I noticed the same thing, 2020, the pandemic. That was a big growth move for my business. And I think I don't know, Teresa could probably tell us a lot more about what's going on in the finance industry. But to me, from an outsider, from my perspective, it kind of looks like a controlled demolition going on. And, you know, and again, just like from an outside perspective, outside looking in, I see a controlled demolition. And if you know that, just make sure you're not inside the freaking building when it goes down. You know, that would be the best advice I could give you. And I know this call is not about, finances and all that, but it's part of our world. Talk to your people, make sure, you're doing what you need to do to keep yourself personally safe. But from a business perspective, it's going to cause a lot of turmoil. It's going to cause a lot of uncertainty. Yep. And when there's uncertainty, people are looking for rocks to grab a hold of. If they feel, and they might not be getting pulled down the stream, but they might feel like it. And if you look like a rock that they can reach out and grab onto, they will. It's like, be there for them. Be the rock. Don't participate in the madness. Don't say, oh yeah, it's destroying my business too. Even if it is, don't tell them that. Be the rock. I used to tell that to my brother all the time. He was always, well, not always. He was a great salesperson. I mean, he could sell anything to anybody. He'd get them on the phone and it's all over. It's game over. But when he would talk to his friends and people around him and other business colleagues, he was always focused on the bad. They would ask him, oh, how's it going? And he'd always take it negative. Say, oh, well, it could be better. And I sat him down one day and I said, you know what? Nobody wants to work with somebody that could be better. You're talking to people on a daily basis. And I know you're not trying to sell them, but those are people that send you referrals. They're not going to send business referrals to somebody that's down. They're going to throw people. They're going to say, hey, I got this guy that's just flat kicking ass. You want to be part of his world. And as soon as he did that, talk about a snowball, a lot of things happened for him when he just shifted that. And is it the truth? Maybe not 100%, but it created the truth. It went from him talking about things not being so great, and all that did was perpetuate not being that great. All that was going to do was hold him on that path or take him down. And as soon as he shifted that one perception, people started referring him. Because guess what? All those people, they knew a lot of people that weren't doing so great. And what do you want to do for your friends? You hook them up, right? You don't send them to another guy that's not doing so great. You send them to somebody that's kicking ass. You say, hey, you want to dig out of this? You follow the right people. Here's one. Let me connect you. So, think about that, because I have an idea. There's a lot of nasty shit coming down our world in the next year or two. And if you become the rock, you will go the right direction instead of the wrong direction. People will want to work with you. I've seen it over and over and over. Not only in my business, but anybody that does that, follows that advice. It doesn't matter what you do. You could be a real estate agent. You could be a stockbroker. You could be a web developer. It doesn't matter. People always want to migrate toward successful people. They don't want to migrate to somebody that's going down the toilet, because they don't want to go down with you. So it's, and it sounds funny when I say that. I'm like, this sounds really shitty, but no pun intended. But it's true. People want to grab onto the coattails and ride the way up, not the other way around. I mean, think about it. If you were going to hang out with somebody, or you wanted to do business with somebody, who would you choose? The rock star that's on his way up, or somebody that's struggling just like you are? Who are you going to gravitate towards? I think I know who I would. You always want the easy way. The elevator up is a lot easier than the stairs. Even if,
I think we all have a notion that if we get people to do it on the cheap, we're going to win. And that's a huge misnomer.
yeah. It's not, well, it's not never about the cheap, but it's rarely about the cheap. It's about value. If you could buy a cheap disaster, or you could spend a little money and get a success, I think you'd probably spend the money. But yeah, anytime, and I've heard a lot of the great salespeople say this. They say if your price is a problem, it's because you haven't explained the value properly. That's basically the root of that evil. And if you don't have enough value to justify the price, then that might be on you. There's no reason to rip people off. But again, if this has a lot to do with how unique the item is. If you're dealing with a commodity that is readily available on every street corner for a certain price, and you go and try and charge double for the same thing, and you say it's different and it's really not, that's kind of the con man game. You don't want to really do that. That's not going to, eventually they're going to figure it out, right? But most of us have unique stuff, even if it's ourselves. And if you provide the value in that and you deliver on the value, then you can charge really whatever you want. There's so many people that tell me I don't charge enough, and they're right. They're absolutely right. But it's because I've come to a point where I don't need to. They talk about when you get to a certain level, you kind of give back, or philanthropy or whatever. And maybe that's kind of one of my underlying strings, is why I do what I do now. I don't really need to charge that much, so I don't. So whether that's good or bad, I think it's probably, and I can tell you this, I have, across my entire career, I've lost some really big jobs, some really big projects. I don't want to say job because I never wanted a job, but projects. I've lost some major projects, major money-making opportunities because I didn't charge enough. And I'll give you a perfect example in the corporate world. When they've got budgets, and they have in their mind, they have an idea of what they're going to spend on certain things. And it's usually heavily inflated over what it's really worth. And most of the people that serve that community, serve that world, they know that, and they price accordingly, because they know if they go in cheap, it won't be trusted. It won't be looked upon as the same thing, even though it might be. The cheap thing might even be better, but it's not looked upon that way. And I'll give you a perfect example of this. When I was in the photography world, and I was bootstrapping. I was in the transition from moving from photography to internet. And I started building websites for all these customers that I knew were not going to need me very soon in the photography world. I did special effects photography for advertising agencies and big companies. And Photoshop came out, so that I could see the writing on the wall. That career was going to end really quickly. And I was right. I had about a 1 year, maybe 18-month window that I had to transition out, because that business was gone. 18 months, it was gone. And I took that time to transition into web development and build websites for all those companies. And a perfect example, one of the companies I was working with in photography was the Roger Dunn Golf guys. And they owned Worldwide Golf, which was a big institution. It owned all kinds of golf industry companies. It was like a conglomerate. And the guy that I was working with in there, taking photographs of their clubs and stuff, he said, hey, he goes, the owner wants to get into a website. He goes, I'd like you to put a bid in. But he said, here's the deal. I can tell you one thing. if you're the lowest bid, you're not going to get the job. This guy's going to take the mid bid. And he said, I know what you've kind of quoted me in the past on a website. And he said, that's not going to fly. He said, you're going to have to shoot for the moon if you want a chance at this. So I'm like, okay. And the job that I was quoting, normally I would have charged about $3,500 to $5,500 for. That would have been the cost to build the commerce site they were looking for at the time. My bid to them was $52,000. And I was still the low guy. I was the low guy by a long shot. The second lowest bid to me, I think, was in the $80,000 range. I wound up getting the job, but the only reason I got the job was because I actually got a chance to sit and talk to the owner. And in talking to the owner, there was nobody else he was going to go with but me. And I got the job. I finished the job in a third the time that the rest of them were quoting. He was incredibly happy. He got everything he wanted. But if I didn't have that inside track, I would have missed that job because I was too low, even at $52,000, roughly 10 times what I would have charged. And I would have missed the opportunity. Another one, here's another one that happened. These were almost back to back. And again, this was in the big .com bubble, when people were paying a lot more than they should have. And it was just the way it was. And they thought it was the way it should be. So this job was for a company called Craft Products, new startup. They were going up against Michael's Craft Stores. Not Craft the food, Craft Products like arts and crafts. And this was it was actually a guy that I had known for a long time. And I knew he was cheap. I knew he was cheap, but I knew he had some investors. So I wasn't going to go down to the 5,500 level where I should have been. I charged him, I think I charged him about 25 or 35,000. I don't remember at the time. But I charged him that, and he got his investors, to kick down for it. They paid for it. I gave them everything they wanted, everything. The site worked flawlessly. And right before they went live, he came back to me and he said, we can't go live with the site. And I'm like, why not? What's wrong with it? Is there something I missed, or, did you add new requirements that you think I can't do, or, what's the problem? And he said, no. He said the problem was it didn't cost enough. And I'm like, excuse me? I'm like, I can re-invoice you if you like. And he said, no. He goes, we brought in some new investors, and they don't believe that they don't want to back a company that doesn't have $100,000 website with a dev team behind it. And I'm like, all right, well, I don't have a dev team. I can re-invoice you $100,000 if you like, but I can solve that part of your issue. But he said, no, he goes, they really need a dev team behind it. And I'm like, okay, no problem. He had already paid me for the site. It wasn't a matter that he was taking something away from me. He had already paid me for it. And he said, I would like you to consult with us. He goes, I'd like to extend your part of the project, and I want to pay you another $10,000 to consult with us and make sure these guys do what we need. He goes, I know you speak their language. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. So they brought me into the boardroom, and here is the big boardroom. And I'm sitting on the end. I've got the captain's chair on the end. And on one side of me is my buddy's team, his in-house team. They're investors, everybody from his side of the table was on one side. On the other side was this dev team that they had brought in, and they were paying these guys $125,000 to develop the site. And I sat at the end of the table silently listening to the conversation for about 45 minutes. And at the end, my buddy looks at me and he says, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, I think the hard questions haven't been answered yet." So I took the reins and I started asking the dev team how they were going to pull this off. And my line of questioning probably ran about 10 minutes, and they were very uncomfortable with it. And at the end of the 10 minutes, I kind of got to the end and I stopped and I said, "Okay, I have what I need." And my buddy again turns to me, he goes, "What do you think?" And in front of everyone, I said, "What I think is I think they have no idea how to pull this off. And I think $125,000 is not going to educate them." And I left it at that. And they didn't dispute it either. There was no dispute on that table over what I said. And I was right dead nuts on the money. They spent the 125 grand. It wasn't even close. And they spent another 75 grand. And it wasn't any closer. And the launch day, they finally rolled back and went with mine and launched on my program that was already working and did everything that they wanted. But before they actually went live in the final hour, I believe it was Michael's. They never told me who it was, but I believe it was Michael's Arts and Crafts came in and bought the whole project for a multi-million-dollar offer. And they sold it. And I was there going, okay, do they want to consult? Maybe they want to hire me. And wound up, all they wanted to do is they wanted to kill it. They spent several $1,000,000 just to put it in a box and make sure the box was never opened, because they weren't ready to roll out their project yet. They weren't ready to go online. They were behind, but they didn't want to get swept off their feet with some newcomer. So they bought it and boxed it.
Mm.
But again, it's just, the whole point of that is, depending on where you are, you need to price accordingly. If you're not pricing accordingly, it's not looked at as the same. Sometimes the price alone is the value, not necessarily what's behind it. A lot of different people see value in different ways. So just your price alone can be the value. So keep that in mind. Always in the back, I can't stress this enough. It rolls back to the avatar every freaking time. You've got to know who you're talking to. You've got to know what they want and why they want it. And in this case, he wanted a high price because his investors were going to put a ton of money in his pocket if he could pull it off. They wanted to see some money spent. They weren't going to give him millions of dollars if enough money wasn't spent to justify it and, and make their investment real. So again, you got to know who you're talking to. You got to know what they want and why they want it if you're going to be successful. Otherwise, it's just luck. And you can do that a couple of times in your life. You'll just get lucky. But it's not, you can't repeat it. You can't drive the train with luck.
How can you know in a unique situation like, walking into the boardroom, if you didn't have the guy giving you the heads up on that, and you 10 times your price and you're still too low? How can you know that in advance? Because that sounds like a personal thing. That doesn't sound like an industry thing. You can't walk into an industry and think the whole industry is going to pay outrageous, those kinds of outrageous prices just because the industry is doing it. Otherwise, if that was a known commodity, everybody would flock to that industry. But
Well,
that,
it was pure lack of experience on my part is what it was. I wasn't used to being in that part of the business. And, you know, I was in the photo world, and in the photo world, I knew that shit like the back of my hand. I knew day rates, I knew expenses, I knew exactly what they expected to pay. And I was right there, right on the money. But when it came to the web, it was so new for everybody, and I wasn't up to speed on it yet. I didn't know what those people were willing to pay when it came to the .com thing. The .com bomb basically is what we're talking about. When I started doing websites, people wouldn't pay anything for them because there was no budget for it. And I think a lot of you have heard me tell this story before, how I actually got all those websites and all that hosting business was by building free websites for all the companies I worked for, because they didn't have a budget for it. I was pitching it to them, and they loved the idea of it, but they didn't have budget for it. So what I did with them, again, knowing who they were, what they wanted, why they wanted it, and how much they could afford for it, I said, look, I'll build you the site for free if you host it with me. And the hosting is a couple $100 a month. And knowing that their petty cash would cover that and they didn't have to justify it, that's how I was able to penetrate that market. And that's how, you know, in the first probably 3 years of me being into the internet, I built a shitload of free websites. And it built me the bridge to freedom. Because after 3 years, I had enough hosting money coming in, and I never had to work again. If I worked or not, the money came in for the hosting, and nothing else mattered at that point. So I worked my ass off. You know, I say I'm lazy, but if there's a goal in mind and I know it's going to get me what I want, I will do whatever it takes to be lazy. And that's exactly what I did. In that period of time, I was nose to the grindstone. I was knocking out 3 to 5 websites a week myself. I didn't have a team. I was cranking these things out myself and putting them up and hosting them and building servers and the whole bit, you know, getting that whole business up to speed. And after 3 years of that, it was like, I'll never have to work again. Having all those companies paying me that much every month, you know, and I'm just covering the cost of the servers. It was awesome. You know, but then the whole .com bomb thing came into play, and people wanted big, elaborate commerce sites and all these fancy features and, you know, a bunch of crazy stuff. So that was when I rolled into an area that I wasn't familiar with. I didn't realize how much they expected to pay. You know, the whole commerce thing, it took things to a whole new level. I wasn't building commerce sites for free. I was just building regular, you know, website, you know, informational sites for companies just so they had a presence. That was the free entry. You know, that was my way to get the door open. Once I had the door open and locked those companies in, you know, they were forever kind of clients. Talk about lifetime value. So it was the next step I wasn't educated on. You know, I didn't know, I'd never worked with investors before. I didn't realize, you know, that if they don't put up enough money, they don't trust the thing. If it doesn't cost enough, they don't trust it. They're not going to put, you know, $1 million behind a $50 website, right? Not going to happen. And I was not familiar with that game. So it was just pure inexperience on my part when I made that jump. But I learned quick, you know, I'm a quick study. And I developed several very expensive, in my eyes, very expensive websites in that .com bubble before it blew up. I could have told you it was going to blow up. I'm like, you can't pay these kind of prices for this. It's not worth it. It's unrealistic. And sure enough, it did implode, and then things went back to normal, and I was perfectly fine. I was perfectly at home and with normal. You know, so, and again, you know, I think we're at that point in history where there's going to be some stuff come down the pipe. Business is going to change. The world's going to change. Prices are going to go up. There's going to be some struggle. And if you're there, if you can identify it and you can help people through it, there's a lot of money in solving problems. So keep your eyes peeled. You know, we all have different opportunities. We all have different people around us. We all have different worlds that we live in, but keep your eyes peeled for the problems coming, the people that you know, and the problems they're going to have. There'll be a lot of money in solving them. And this could be, you know, online, offline, doesn't really matter, but keep your eyes peeled for that. And it doesn't mean you have to do the work either. It really doesn't. If you identify a problem that's happening, all you have to do is be the middleman. There's more, you know, knowing what I know today, I would rather be the middleman than the provider. Truly, I want, you know, financial freedom is about making money and having free time. That has middleman written all over it. You know, building a big business and driving the train and, you know, hiring employees and all that stuff. That could be a bridge to freedom, but it's a long ways out. You might not be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But if you can position yourself in the interim where people have already built those bridges and you're just guiding people to the bridge to take a toll, that's where you can get freedom real quick. Because you need income, you need money, but if you can get it without working hard for it, then you got your time and your money. That's the freedom I've always talked about. You can't have freedom without time and money. You know, you can have all the money in the world. If you don't have any time and you're tied up, that's not freedom. You can have all the time in the world, but no money. Again, you might think that's cool, but it's not freedom. You need both. You need both to really, truly have that freedom. And being the middleman, it's the best way I know. So keep your eyes peeled. There's gonna be a lot of problems come down the pipe. You know, we're right on the edge of it. And keep your eyes peeled for what those are. And if you can solve the problems for them, or if you can just be the middleman, find the people who do have solutions for the problems, make the connections and get paid. If you can find stuff that pays recurring, all the better. You know, like I'll use KARTRA as a perfect example to this. A lot of people have the problem, like when 2020 came around, and a lot of businesses were only doing business in the real world. They weren't doing business online yet. They had a real eye opener when all of a sudden now they can't work in the real world. And we're talking about all kinds of businesses here. We're talking yoga studios, karate studios, any place where people went and gathered for a service was all of a sudden out the window. Even gyms. You know, what do you do if you're the business owner there and you can't have people come in like they did, you know, in the past? There's this little thing called the internet. There's a virtual world out there. All you have to do is figure out how to replicate what you did in the real world. You know, in most cases, you weren't physically touching these people. You were guiding them visually, standing in front of you. We can do that. We're doing it right now. You know, if we had to meet every week in a certain room, would you guys all show up? No, Teresa's not getting on a plane every week to come out and see me. I might be good, but I'm not that good.
Maybe I could live on your boat.
Oh, there you go. I could just get a bigger boat and we can all just hang out.
Hey, now that's an idea.
But you know, they weren't thinking about it. They didn't even know it was an option to do what they did online. And for me, like, I don't want to go in and build the systems to do that, but I know this little thing called KARTRA that where they can do recurring memberships. They can use Zoom. You know, I don't want to go build a Zoom platform, but I can connect the dots and make money off all of it forever. And those businesses that I hooked up and put into KARTRA and set up on Zoom and all that, I am still making the commissions today from 2010. Their businesses are never going to go back to the way they were. They're always going to have that online piece now, forever. So KARTRA is $99 a month, basically, to run your entire business online. That's the cheapest overhead a business is ever going to see. And they found out that they could basically run their whole business. Like, let's take a karate studio, for instance. If you're going to open a karate studio, you have this little thing called rent. It's a little more than $100 a month. You have this other bill that comes that keeps these things on. I think they call them lights, so you can see. You've got landlines. Yeah, I mean, you can just add up and add up and add up, and you got insurance. You got people walking on your property. You better have some insurance. You've got thousands of dollars a month of overhead if you're doing this right. Right? Or you can throw all that shit out the window and you pay $100 and you run the whole thing online. It's a little more profitable. And you can reduce your rates and you could get more customers. It kind of sounds like a pretty freaking good business model, if you ask me. And I think a lot of these people figured that out. You know, there are still businesses where you got to lay hands. Like chiropractor is a perfect example. I had a few chiropractors that said, oh my God, what am I going to do? I can't see people. And I'm like, well, you can show them how to self-adjust and get through on video. You can have your appointments. You can talk to them. You can give them stretches. You can get them through without physically touching them every week. You know, maybe you have a 3-month checkup and you just be extra careful, but you can still charge them. You can still have those appointments. Maybe you charge them a little less, but you got a lot less overhead too. You can at least get through. It's, you know, when the shit hits the fan, it's about survival. Let's survive. Let's figure out, you know, how to live in this new world and then thrive. So again, it's just about identifying the problems that come down the pipe. I don't know what they're going to be. I'll know when they show up and I'll figure out how to fix them real quick. But keep your eyes peeled. You know, I think we're going to be moving into some fairly uncertain times ahead, and business owners tend to freak out. There's a lot of business owners that are not really on solid ground, especially if you're dealing with small business owners. If you're dealing with the smaller people, the solopreneurs, you know, the home businesses, a lot of times it's almost like a paycheck to paycheck job. They're not in much better circumstance than a paycheck to paycheck job. So they're not on solid ground. They're going to be the first ones to freak out even before they're affected. Like you'd be amazed how the news affects people. You know, there was another thing back, I don't know what year it was, but way back, I had my phone starts ringing with people are all freaked out about Google. And it was hilarious because I rarely watch the news or anything like that. That's just kind of a waste of time for me. people tell me what's important to them soon enough. But I had all these clients calling me, and they're like, "Oh my God, I just saw on the news that Google announced anybody that doesn't have a Google sitemap is not going to get search traffic." And that was something that it was before Matt Cutts even. Matt Cutts was kind of Google's PR guy for a long time until he just had so much egg on his face, nobody listened to him anymore. But Matt Cutts' job was basically to be the front face of Google and tell people how to use Google. So he was like their SEO guy, their search engine optimization guy. And it was so funny that there was a whole world of SEO people that listened to this idiot. And he was nothing more than a PR machine for Google, getting people, his two things, two primary purposes for his existence was to manipulate the SEO people so they could identify them and eliminate them. That was the two purposes behind Matt Cutts. So you had this whole industry that's listening to him and following his instructions. And I believe it was the guy before him. And I don't think it was Matt himself, but I think it was the guy before him. The one that leaked this out into the news was about the sitemap thing. If you don't have a Google sitemap, that your site is no longer going to get traffic. And I had all these people calling me going, "Oh my God, can you put a Google sitemap on my site?" And my first answer was no, I'm not going to do that. And I said, if you're going to do that outside of me, we're not going to be friends anymore, because that is going to get you banned. And then you're going to come back at me and you're not going to be happy. And I'm not going to have that conversation. We're having it now. We're not going to do that. It's my primary purpose to keep you safe. And if putting a sitemap on your site is important to you, I'm telling you that's going to put you in harm's way, and I want no part of that. So we're going to part ways if that's what you really want. And I said, what you need to do is turn the TV off and let me deal with Google, and you just go and work on your business. And I was right on the money. There was an absolute shitload of sites that got banned shortly after that. And they all had Google sitemaps. So it's kind of interesting the way that went down. And I even spoke at a high-end mastermind. There was a big mastermind for SEO people. It was the biggest SEO gathering in the world. And this was at the time. And I don't know how I even got invited to it. I was getting these emails and I just thought it was spam. I really didn't even pay attention to it until Dory Friend she's a big in the SEO world. She reached out to me and she says, "Hey, what day are you flying in? I'd like to go out to dinner with you." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? Fly in where?" And she says, "Austin for the mastermind." And I'm like, "Well, I didn't even know I was invited. I've been seeing these emails." And she said, "Are you kidding me?" She said, "You're the reason they put it together."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, well, I guess I'm going, when do you want me there?" But it was funny. The guy that was running it, oh God, what's his name? I forget his name. It was Keith Baxter and some other guy. And Keith, I think, was the one that was actually coordinating it. So he was running the group. He was calling on people and kind of managing it and moderating it and all that. And I was there, and Perry Belcher was sitting right next to me. He positioned himself right next to me. And every time somebody would say something, he'd kind of lean over to me and he'd say, "Is that true?" And I'd usually answer one of two ways. I'd either say, "Well, it's interesting," or I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. And that was, for the most part, what he was hearing. And he came to realize that if I said that's interesting, that he was going to do it. but anyway, they go around. It was, it was all day, and I hadn't said anything. I was just sitting there listening in and listening to all their their thoughts and ideas and things that they were doing and things they thought were successful, and a lot of it was around the Google sitemap. And I didn't say anything. I was just biting my tongue, just kind of sitting there taking it all in. But I did tell Perry, I would not touch that one with a 10-foot pole. And it came, we're getting real close to the end of the thing. And Keith, he said, he goes, I'd love to hear what John Limbacher thinks about this, because they were on the sitemap thing again. It came back up. He goes, he's been in it longer than any of us. I'd like to hear his view on it. And I told him exactly what my view on it was. And I said, any of you guys that do that or have done that, don't undo it, you're going to pay the price, and it's not going to be too far in the future. And it pissed them off, because here you've got the best guys in the world thinking that they're onto something. And then I come up and basically tell them they're an idiot. And they didn't like that. That pissed them off. And I was not very liked in most of that community. But Keith, on the other hand, Keith Baxter didn't say anything. He didn't back me up. He just kind of let the thing play out. But of all the guys at the table, Perry and Keith went and removed those sitemaps off of all their sites. And about 3 weeks later, the hammer came down, and the rest of their sites got banned. And it was hilarious, because Keith sent an email out to the group and said, how do you feel about John Limbacher now? And most of them still to this day won't have anything to do with me. They want nothing to do with me at all. But of all the guys I know in the SEO world, I still don't know anyone that has my record of never having a client site banned, ever.
Wow.
Not once. So I may not have done as well with some of the sites as some of them might have done, but I kept everybody out of harm's way, for sure. So, Richard, we're not hearing you. Look like you were.
There we go. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Terry Belcher just did a podcast with a guy where he talked about two things. Number one being that evidently the reason he's gone silent is because he's had his third divorce again. So he had to go half of everything, as he said again. So
oh, Perry did? Perry divorced the little Filipino gal?
whatever. He said she's a great gal and stuff, but they just didn't have much in common, and et cetera, et cetera. But anyway.
Well, that's what you get with a mail order bride.
But that's sort of why he disappeared. And I didn't realize that early on, he was doing diet type stuff, related stuff, and he made some claims. Hello, there we go. So they were, that he made some claims, and one of the states the state he was operating in came in and dropped the hammer on him and took everything literally he had, except for, I think he said he had a $3 million line of credit or something. And then they decided that, they weren't done with him yet, and they decided they're going to take it all. And so he was literally starting over from scratch. And that's why he switched over to he never makes claims anymore. What he does is he gets people emotionally involved, which I thought was really brilliant. So you'd never make a claim, just get them so emotionally wound up that anything else would be a stupid decision, which is kind of what you talk about a lot. Mm-hmm. But the other thing he talked about was, and I've kind of done a little bit of research, apparently Google Max is coming, and it is literally, if you want to advertise with Google, probably going forward, you give them the home URL of your website and tell them how much you want to spend per month. They write the ads, they direct the traffic to whichever page they think is the right page for a particular. They won't give you keyword research metrics. They give you no information. You just give them money and they'll run your site for you. And it's like there's about 7 different conflicts of interest immediately that come up on that. But the thing that Perry goes back to, he says, look, I've made back all my millions in about 6 months. And he only does email. And he's back to the email marketing, which kind of tied in with another thing that I've been coming across. Another guy's talking about, if you're going to have an online business, even if it's an SEO business or whatever, he says, productize it. Make products where you sell somebody a thing and they use it. He says services are deadly because that requires ongoing continual maintenance at some level. He says try and productize it. And with what you're saying, okay, well, we're gonna do that middleman. It's all gonna, if everything I do is affiliate, then if I'm doing services, I'm gonna have to find somebody that's serious, but that still does mean I have to manage them. But I guess managing somebody providing the services would be okay. But I still think that the productizing and going more towards where there's a basic philosophy in sales that I've never met very many salespeople really understand it when you put it this way. There's 2 kinds of sales. One is where when you make the sale, that's the end of the relationship, essentially. Like buying a house. Once you sold the house is sold. They ain't buying another one. You can keep the thing going, down the line. It's good to have relationships and stuff, but it's not like a psychiatrist who, when he makes a sale, he is now on the books week after week, where he has to be there fulfilling the product and that sort of thing. They go, okay, so are you going to be a sale is the end or a sale is the beginning? Is it going to be a product? Is it going to be a service? Is it going to be email? And with Google Max, it sounds like they can, given that they're manipulating the search engine results anyway, they don't have to put good pages on the first page of Google. They can put shit on the first page of Google and put some of their ads up there, and those ads look good, and that's the stuff that they can sell. I mean, we're back to that whole conflict of interest thing, but do you have any thoughts on Google Max at this point yet?
Yeah, it's actually called Google Performance Max.
Right.
And it looks really good. I've actually talked to a Google rep about it. And I'm gonna be trying it, but Perry is so good at this shit that I'm gonna take his lead on it. He's doing a conference in Vegas in August, and I think I'm gonna go to it. I haven't been real excited about going out to, conferences and stuff with all that's going on, but I think I'm going to break down and go to his in August and get his full take on it. I don't know if you know, but this last weekend, we took the boat over to Catalina and took a small group of people, and we actually went through Perry's copy course. And he is just so awesome. He's so entertaining. And his message is so powerful. The way he positions stuff is it's like magic. And it's from an Okie from Pastokee. It's like, Jesus, if this guy, with his upbringing and background and mouth can get away with this stuff, it's going to be a no-brainer for me. And that's the way you wind up feeling. He talks about emotion. He pulls you into that emotional state of, oh my God, if this guy can do this, I can do this all day long. But it's just like ACT. It is incredibly simple, yet incredibly difficult to implement. So, but it's just incredible information, the way he sets his stuff up. And he talks about, a lot of it's very similar to ACT. But what he focuses mostly on is, again, the grabber, the headline, which that's big idea, no matter how you slice it. It's the attention grabber. He said the attention grabber is everything, which we know that. he does his attention grabbers a little bit different than the big idea process. Which one's better? I don't know that one's better than the other as long as you can grab the attention. But having more tools in your tool belt, I always think is a plus. So in some ways his might work better. Some ways the big idea formula might work better. But being open to it and being aware of both directions, I think is a good thing. The other thing he said is after the attention grabber, he said the next thing you work on is your offer. He said those two things. He said if you have a good attention grabber and you have a good offer, the rest of it can be mediocre and you will get away with it. But he was, he talked a lot about his offer. And I found there was a lot of really fascinating stuff encased in the way he puts an offer together. And it's a very emotional. He gets you emotionally attached. The way that we do emotion inside the ACT program is three-dimensionalizing the benefits. He takes that to a whole new level. The depth that he digs into to create emotion around an offer is just amazing. This guy is really, really good. If you ever have the opportunity to get any of his trainings or anything, it's a worthwhile investment for sure. So, and like I said, I'm probably going to break down and go to Vegas. One of the things he's talking about is Performance Max. It's his traffic conference. And that's one of the things that he's going to cover. And it happens to be one of the things I'm very interested in right now too, because as you know, a lot of people are looking for traffic. They're looking for different sources of traffic. SEO has become incredibly difficult just because of the way everything is now. It's no longer really about getting traffic to the site because Google doesn't want to send traffic to a site unless it converts. And it's so hard to get clients to build sites that convert. So SEO is a really tough battle these days. Unless you've got an entire marketing team all working together to create a conversion machine, then it makes SEO a lot easier. But if you don't have that, we've got a lot of stuff. Like we've got Site Pop that where we can juice the machine, we can get the wheels turning. But ultimately, if the traffic going to the site, when it starts sending real traffic to the site, if it doesn't convert, it's just killing all of our efforts. Even same thing with link building. Link building is super expensive. Doing real link building is incredibly expensive right now because you've got to have links on sites that actually have real traffic that's going to send them across to you. I mean, one single link can cost you upwards of $500 a link.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy how much you can spend on link building now that is effective. It's like, in our lower SEO programs, we can't afford to do real link building because of the cost. We can do all the social links and, a lot of the links that you're expected to have, directories, local businesses, all of that stuff, but they don't really drive traffic. They're good links to have. They give you a little bit of authority. They help your NAP. They do a lot of the basic stuff. And if you're in a local business that has very little competition, that can be enough. But you get outside of that, you get any kind of competition whatsoever, and it takes the real deal. It takes a site that actually converts. So when Google does pass the traffic over to you, it snowballs. So that said, SEO has become incredibly difficult. And SEO, the thing about SEO, it used to be that you could get a site to the top for a few keywords that had some good volume. And now you can play a numbers game. Let's send, 100,000 people across this offer. And if we get 1/100%, we're making money. That doesn't exist anymore. If you can get Google to send you a fraction of traffic off of a keyword that's got 100 visitors a month now, you're doing good. But if you get a fraction, a quarter of a percent off that, that's too expensive. You know, the metrics have changed radically, and that's all by design. You know, Google did this absolutely by design to kill the SEO industry because they hated it. They did not want their search manipulated. They wanted to send good user experience out. They still do, and they've been very effective at controlling it. So to the SEO world, that's devastating, because we used to work in a world where it was just slop. You know, it was slop. We bang a site up, it gets enough traffic, we make a few bucks, and everybody's happy. It was sloppy. It was easy. And as the screws got tightened down, the slop went away, and now you better have your shit together or it doesn't pencil out. It's really, and it's good. It's good in one way because you want people to have a good user experience. But as far as from an SEO world, there used to be a ton of opportunity in SEO. And, you know, they say SEO is dead. Well, that's bullshit. SEO didn't die. It's still the same game. You get listed at the top, you get traffic, right? It's still a matchmaker game, and it's still a game that is it's the ultimate traffic source. When somebody types in a keyword searching for your product and they find you, it doesn't get any better than that. It is still the best traffic on the planet. But it's harder. The metrics are tighter. It's a dog eat dog world, you know, in that arena. So I'm really excited to go and find out about this Performance Max and see if it might be an easy button. I don't have my hopes set real high that it's going to be, because I know who's behind it, but you never know. You just never know.
John, is that Perry event? I just saw that too, but he's having an event, but he's only having, he said maximum 6, maybe 12 people. And he's got a lot of criteria in terms of.
That's a different deal. That's a high-end coaching program is what that is.
Well, that's what I thought. But if he's having another one, I might even come out of my shell to go to Vegas for that one.
Well, I can reach out to him. Maybe we can get a bulk Dominator discount.
Do it.
But no, it's 3 days. It's the beginning of either the beginning or ending of, I think it's the end of August. And it's 3 days, and I think it was $495 for the event. So
That's doable.
yeah, definitely. And he's doing it at Red Rock in Las Vegas. So it's at a hotel. So it's not going to be just 6 people. It'll I'm sure he'll pack the house too. He's pretty good at doing that. Perry is awesome. There's nothing about him that falls short.
Sheer entertainment.
Yeah, he is just awesome. So,
that podcast, he also said that he has had a thing going for years. I guess this is his variation on Steve Jobs walking around with his book bag, is that Terry said that every year he would decide he would dedicate 1 year to studying, and he would fill in the blank. And 1 year it was political speech writing. Once it was primates. Another one that was, neurolinguistics. And, so this, and then you see all these guys online saying, here, you can put up a site, you can do emails, do our cut and paste this or cut and paste that. It's like, oh God, here we go again. You gotta get educated. You gotta have something on the ball to make that stuff work. You gotta spend time like you are getting grilled by Google to figure out how Google works.
Yeah, his copywriting course was a fill in the blank system too. So he's big on that. That actually is something that sells really well. Fill in the blank systems, those have always sold really well, and that's why you see them over and over and over. It's been a while since I saw one, so he kind of revived it. And it's been a while since I saw Perry do much of anything. But he and Ryan sold they didn't sell what's their company called? Digital Marketer. They didn't sell that, but they sold TNC. They sold the conference. And they're still involved. They're still the face of it. But man, talk about selling something and being in the right place at the right time. They sold that right before the pandemic. So the big media company that bought it, I'm sure they paid top dollar for it. And then they had 2 years where they couldn't even run it. Talk about taking a whooping. And even last year, when they actually did go live with it, the attendance was so low. It was a disgrace, really. I'm curious to see what happens with it this year. I know last year, even I got a lot of you guys free tickets to it because the last couple weeks they were just trying to get the attendance up, and they were giving away free tickets to the exhibit hall and the I think the keynote speeches. And I know a lot of people that are in our membership, I got those for, and we all met and gathered and went to the show, and it was, the halls were empty. It was like, oh my God, this is like a ghost town, which was cool because I got to talk to a lot of vendors that normally would be busy, and they wouldn't give you the time, but it wasn't good for for their businesses. It was great for me to walk the show though.
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry,
Sure.
I've been listening. And so, John, the whole Google thing, Google Performance Max, what is that? And is Perry going to handle that in Vegas? And
He's gonna talk about it. Performance Max is kind of like their new advertising platform. Like right now, you can go to them and you can do pay-per-click and you can run video ads. They have a display network. The problem with most people that ran Google ads is they didn't really know all of what was involved, because you can go and you can set up a pay-per-click program in about 2 minutes. It's easy. You fill out a couple of questions, you tell it how much you want to spend, you put in your ad copy, and away it goes. But as you know, that ad copy is incredibly important. Unless you can get people to click, it's just going to cost you a lot of money. So with Performance Max, it's kind of like a combination of all of it. And retargeting is part of it too. The average person that does pay-per-click, they go and they set up their pay-per-click program, they pay their money, they get their clicks, and it doesn't work, right? They get traffic, they don't convert, they've spent a bunch of money, and they wind up just shutting it off. The thing with traffic is a lot of traffic doesn't convert on the first run. People aren't ready to buy immediately. In most cases, in a lot of cases, they're starting their education process on a purchase. They usually don't buy in the first step of education. They're there to educate themselves. They're there to find out what solutions there are to the problem. What's the best solution? What's the cheapest solution? Who are the providers for the solution? They're starting their education process. So if you pay for a search to get them on your site when they're starting their education process, expecting them to make a purchase, you're going to have a rude awakening. And that's what most people do. That's the general average experience of advertisers. You have to have a sales system. The first thing, remember, this is just like in the real world. The first thing is a meeting. It's a handshake. It's a, hey, I've got this really cool information I can give you to help you decide, help you in your journey, help you get on your timeline from where you are to where you want to be. That's a lead magnet. Most sites don't even have that. They're sending traffic, expecting them to buy. They don't even have a lead magnet. So that tells you they don't have an email list. They don't have a way to reconnect with them. They don't have a way to create demand and desire. They don't have a way to eliminate objections. They don't have a way to bring them an offer when they're ready to buy. So it's going to be an epic failure. It's doomed from day one. And that's the average experience with most advertisers. They do it and they do it over and over. Google has made billions of dollars every month on people that throw their money away. So at this point, they're probably running out of guinea pigs. They've fleeced the flock. There's no fleece left on the sheep. So now they've got to have something better. They've got to like, hey, let's try and give them some little results so we can keep them on or bring them back. You know, this is probably their idea of bring people back for a second round. And Performance Max takes a lot of the things that they should have been doing originally and didn't know to do it. So one of those things is the display network. The display network is to activate people when they're not searching and let them know a problem to or a solution to a problem. So it activates them, it gets them to search, it engages them, brings them forward. The search, if it's not followed up with retargeting is like once they put their hand up, they say, I'm interested in this. Now you can follow them around all the other websites they go to remind them of their interests, remind them that you were there, remind them to take your lead magnet that helps them on their journey to success. You know, nobody retargets. It's like, that's a big part of the process. All the ones that didn't opt in originally, they put their hand up, they came to your website, they didn't opt in, and now they're gone. That is a lost opportunity. Whatever money you spent, it just went down the toilet. At least retargeting is a cheap way to stay in front of them, to keep pulling them back until they do opt in, and then they get to take your sales process. Now they're in your funnel. Now you have a chance. Now you have a chance to play the game. So if you don't get them into your funnel, you don't have a chance to play. If you spend money to not have a chance to play, you're wasting money. So that's retargeting. That's all part of the process. The display network, you know, that's activating them. Google, it has also this little thing they own called YouTube for video advertising. I mean, that's like TV. If you're advertising on radio and you make the skip to TV, you're going to be uber successful. If you can make it on radio, you can kill it on TV. The problem is most small companies don't have the budget to do a TV ad. Now, that changes the whole game with YouTube. YouTube is online TV. YouTube ads, very few advertisers have figured out. I know there's a lot more. I've been preaching this song for the last probably 8 years. I've been telling everybody, get on YouTube advertising. It's cheap. Nobody's there. Well, now you're finally starting to see, like when I watch videos now, almost every video pops up an ad in the middle of it. You know, we're finally starting to get traction on it. It's going to get a lot worse. And now what's going to happen is Google's smart. They're going to follow the same model as TV and realize, hey, all these people that don't like commercials, let's charge them a premium and remove the commercials. Now they'll get 100 million people paying them $20 a month to watch YouTube without commercials. They are a money-making machine.
YouTube is super expensive monthly. It's like $60 a month.
Really? Okay. There you go.
Like $60 a month, and
holy crap,
the people are getting smart. You know, you can get, you know, Google will give you, what is it, $1 for every 10,000 views you have or something ridiculous. These guys are not sitting on their laurels with that. More and more and more of them are doing their own commercials for their own sponsors on their own channels, and Google is mixing in their ad. I mean, it's going to be wall-to-wall ads on Google probably.
Yeah. So that's what Performance Max is. It's Google is, they're an ad company. No matter how you slice it, they're an ad agency. They know how the shit works. So they're going to help the little guy out and say, hey, you just use our Performance Max product, show us what you want to advertise, and we'll do it. And again, that's just my high level perception. I have not been in under the hood to see how it works, or that's just my take on what I think it is. But and I, as lazy as I am at this point in the game, I'd rather just go and let Perry show me how it works. And
Yeah, August is coming up.
I'll come back, and then I'll hand you guys the keys to the kingdom.
Oh man.
So cool stuff. But yeah, we're definitely going to have to put more of these boat adventures together. That was really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, thumbs up out of Jeff there. Linda,
awesome.
yeah. I think possibly the next one. A lot of people have asked about affiliate marketing too. I might put something together on affiliate. The other thing I was thinking, like for Richard, I know you're not going to fly out for a weekend boating deal or whatever.
I don't know. You might. I hear the cook is really good.
Yeah, if you're at all concerned about dieting and weight loss, you
Stay home.
probably want to pass.
Yeah, I just have to give that thumbs up too.
Wait a minute. You said there are no calories in Limbo Land.
That's right. Until you get off the boat, and then you'll see them appear. They magically appear when you set foot on the dock. They're stored in that invisible bag till you hit the dock.
Hey, John, can I ask a question? I came in late and you were just talking about what market is getting ready to shift rapidly. Could you just recap it briefly so I can so I know what you were talking about?
Oh, it's not just a market, it's the whole world. I was talking about, it looks to me like our government is taking our economy into a controlled demolition. That's what it seems like to me is going on. I know what's behind it. I know why they're doing it, but I don't know how far they're going to go.
Why are they doing it?
They're doing it because the finance world has gotten out of sync with reality, and they felt like they missed the boat, and they don't buy shit at the top. The people
trying to force the market down, of course.
They're going to destroy it. They're going to take it to its knees, and they're going to sell off at the top to get the cash to do it.
You're referring to BlackRock as well. And
Yes,
all of these people.
absolutely. Yeah, they're part of it. The Rothschilds, the whole thing. There's a handful of people that drive the train.
Get richer, right?
So they're, what I see is they're selling off at the top to destroy the whole thing. And then now they're flush with cash, right? What better opportunity to buy up the stuff that they missed out on, all of the crypto and the way the world's going to be, and ride it to the top. They call that a transfer of wealth. And I think that's what we're in the middle of right now, is a transfer of wealth. And, the last times that this has happened, I was too young, too naive, not even in existence. But I can look back and I can learn from history, and I see what's going on. And I'm like, this is an opportunity like I've never seen in my lifetime to be on the right side of it. So I know what they're buying. I know why they're buying it, and I'm buying the shit out of it.
Right behind you, John, right behind you. It's interesting because I just had this conversation yesterday with some of my investors, and they were like, we got to get out of should I sell all of my assets in real estate? And I'm like, no, not yet. we've got another, just because many people are and they're feeling that sense of scarcity, the scarcity is in the availability. That's where the scarcity is. It's not because there aren't opportunities. And I said, the money is just going to, as impossible as this sounds, I see another year to maybe a year and a half growth in the real estate market before it's already shifted on the commercial side, but on the residential side, just because of the supply and demand, there just isn't enough supply. When there is enough supply, there will be less demand, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. But also there's just the affordability to even purchase real estate.
Wait.
With this 0.75% interest that came down the pipe yesterday, the last time they did a shift that big was in the Carter days. And I remember I was young in the Carter days. I was working with my brother and I was a teenager. I was making a lot of money. And I remember my dad had showed me how to negotiate T-bills. He said, you never take the interest rate the bank posts as gospel. He said, you walk in and you sit down with them and you negotiate. They will work with you. And I did. I went in there as I don't remember how old I was, but I was a teenager, basically. I was 17, 18, 19, somewhere in there. And I walked into the Downey Savings across the street from here, and I negotiated a 16% interest rate on T-bills, and I got them to lock it in for 8 years.
Wow.
Talk about a gold mine. And
I need to set something straight here with what she said. I got my real estate license in 1972. How many people were even alive on this broadcast?
Here. Just graduating from high school then.
we were all here. We just weren't doing much.
I got my license and I was a broker for over 20 years. And I can tell you that the one thing about real estate, it's the only thing, the absolute only thing on the planet, with now the exception of crypto, that they aren't making any more of.
Yeah.
And while you may get a little dip, it will always go up. It cannot go down. There's cannot go down.
That's because we keep taking the halcyon drugs and pretending that that bad market existed and it really couldn't have. I mean, I shook my head, in 2014, you're looking at the last 7 years. I'm like, that can't just continue to go up, and it just has.
Yeah.
So
well, here's the thing. It doesn't matter if it's real estate, stocks, crypto, gold, whatever. If you look at wealth, if you want to see how wealth is developed with time compression.
Yes.
Nothing else, because all of it cycles. It all goes up and it all goes down. Real estate's no different. It's the things that drive it up and down that are your indicators of when you can transfer wealth. And same thing with anything else. And the guys behind it, the BlackRocks of the world, the Rothschilds of the world, they have the power to manipulate that. They have the power to sell off enough at the top that the price tanks, and they're flush with cash now. Everyone else is jumping off the ship on the way down, losing their money. And then they're terrified to jump back in. So the big guys with the cash bags, they know when to jump back in. And then all of a sudden it shoots back up. And the guy that sold out that didn't get on that, he's just down. He has lost his wealth. That is a transfer of wealth. It doesn't matter what you're in, what you're invested in. Time compression is the amount of interest that you can earn on an annual basis, and how many times in your life that you can double it. And 72 is the rule. Whatever your interest rate divided into 72 is the amount of years it'll take to double. So the average investor, 10% per year is kind of a benchmark for them for some reason. That takes 7.2 years to double your money. How long are you going to live, and how many times can you double? And that will show you, the math will show you where you're going to be. So if those numbers don't look good to you, you need to compress time, which means you need to increase that interest rate. If you can get 10% per month, let's say, instead of per year, now you can double every 7.2 months. You know, that you can look at, okay, I'm going to live long enough. I can do a few doubles and I can make this X amount to X amount. That's time compression. When you can know when to sell off and get a huge bag of cash and then know when to buy back in and 10 times the amount that you hold, that's time compression. That's the only two ways I know to create time compression with money and generate wealth. And there is just what I see as a massive opportunity of that. These guys are driving the prices of everything down. The crypto, if you look at the crypto, some of the cryptocurrencies, there's 1,000 scams in it too. Don't think you can just buy any cryptocurrency and get wealthy off it. That's not going to happen. It's the same thing with anything else. It's just like the stock market. You know which stocks, you have to pick the right ones. There's only going to be a couple of Apples and Amazons that come out of this mess. If you don't know which ones they are, you could bet on the wrong horse. These guys know which horse to bet on, and they're doing it. And I'm biting on their coattails all the way. So that's time compression. It's just that simple. It all comes down to math, you know, and I know I break things down a little too simple sometimes, but it's just really just that simple. You have two ways to compress time, and that is either multiplying the nest egg that you're working with by selling high and rebuying in low and multiplying the sheer volume of what you hold, or doubling it with interest in a shorter time frame. Those are the only two ways I know of, and I look at shit for every possible angle. You know, there is another one. Somebody could give it to you. You could get an inheritance, but I'm talking about driving your own train. So, and I just think there's going to be lots of opportunities in our near future while everyone else is crying the blues.
The issue is, like you said, is that they know which horse to bet on because they poison all the other horses.
Well, it's really funny. They're poisoning the good horses right now. So everybody jumps out of them. It is an evil, diabolical game going on right now. There's a SEC lawsuit against probably the best asset there is in the crypto industry. They're trying to take it to its knees so they can scoop it up at the bottom.
That's why the plan, I think, is better, because it's all based on the wiggle, and that's
How long do you think they can saber rattle on that, since it's a baseless lawsuit?
Oh, they can rattle their saber for a long time. It's all a controlled demolition, though. It's a senseless lawsuit. There's no reason for it. The judge is getting pissed off because it's worthless. But I think there's other people pulling the strings. There's other people driving the train, and they're waiting till the opportune time, the opportune moment to release it. I don't even know if they're going to put it back in the U.S. exchanges when they release it from the lawsuit. I think it's going to go to the roof before it gets back on the exchanges. I could be wrong with that, but that's what I think. That's why I'm just loading up every little bit I can right now.
I wrote my congressman about that whole case, and you can do that with there's a website called crypto-law.com where it's a pre-formatted email, and it will send it to your congressman about that specific case. It's a huge breakdown in justice.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's criminal. What's going on is absolutely criminal fraud within the government. The problem is you can write the congressman all you want. It's not going to affect the ones behind it pulling the strings until it's over. And then once it's over, there's going to be a lot of sacrificial lambs. There's some of these people that are doing fraudulent things inside here that if they don't go to jail, that in itself will be criminal. There's people in the SEC that should be behind bars for what they have done and what they're doing. If anyone in the private sector had done this kind of corruption, they'd go to jail for the rest of their life. No questions asked. There wouldn't even be a chance in hell for them. So,
but that kind of behavior has already been normalized.
Yes, exactly.
Over the last 6 years, 8 years, I've watched multiple security clearance violations, like using home servers, using home email addresses, leaking information. Anybody that was not a government employee would be in prison for 5 to 20 on that. And I worked in an arena where we were every year we were educated, and re-educated on here's the rules for this, and if you violate them, it's pretty much 1 to 5, no questions asked, per incident. And it's been very publicly stated by the government that for people that are on government payroll, it's like, it's not really that big of a deal.
It doesn't apply to them.
Well, no, but it does apply to them. They're just not enforcing it against them. So why would they enforce it against anything else against anyone else within the government?
And it's the revolving door of going from government to corporate that it's like expected.
Well, Google has been doing it since 2006. Google has been collecting, private information since 2006 and never even been touched, never even been questioned. So crazy stuff. But anyway, there's
also a problem, John, is that I heard an interesting statistic is with the stimulus packages, when the first stimulus package went out, since that went out, that the amount of money that the US government printed to cover all those stimulus checks is equal to all of the money they printed before that. And there's just so much money in the economy right now. That's part of what's really causing stuff to go screwy wop on top of it. I mean, there's just structural things built in.
Well, that they're going to get it so screwed up that we're going to beg for change, and that's the plan. It's so they can make this change, they can make this shift without being questioned. They're going to switch everything over to digital currency. It's already happening. I don't know how many places I go into now and they don't take cash. There's a change shortage. Really? That sounds like complete bullshit to me. The same amount of change is still sitting out there. People aren't hoarding quarters, right? That is complete bullshit. The whole pandemic thing was when they started doing that. Oh, change isn't safe. You can't touch and then all of a sudden there's a change shortage. Well, that's interesting. Since nobody's using it, how is it short? I'm telling you, there's some stuff going on that none of us will ever know or understand, but it's all in one direction to get us to comply, to get us to beg for what is coming so they have no resistance. They're breaking the spirit of freedom so they can do what they want and no one will challenge it.
Unless we all stand up and say no, like scandemic and vaccinations that have nothing killing anybody.
I can guarantee you there's not enough people left in this country that have the backbone to do that, to make a difference.
What a sad statement.
It's very sad.
They're going to go after the food supply and even basic gas electric service. So it's going to get gnarly, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
Pacific Union Railroad sent a letter, was within the last week, to the refineries that refine diesel. Then there's an additive that they have to have by law. to go with the diesel. And Union Pacific said that unless the refineries cut their shipments in half for this diesel additive, which means that cuts the diesel supply in half, they will completely block all shipments of it, which means no diesel at all. And now, so that means in about 2 months,
No trucks.
well, half of the diesel fuel that's currently available will be available. So that'll shut down at least half of the shipping of food, of everything else within the United States, as well as it'll affect heating and some other stuff.
Yeah. And like I said, it's a controlled demolition. They're doing
BlackRock owns Union Pacific. The CEO of BlackRock, his wife, his brother, and his daughter all work in the White House.
Controlled demolition. I'm telling you, they're doing it for a reason. They don't want resistance when they throw the switch on this whole new, swap of money. And they're going to have their foot on everyone's neck so tight that they'll say, don't complain. Don't complain. We'll crush you. It could get worse.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I'm
not going to say what I'm thinking. I'm just not going to put that out there.
Yeah.
We're already seeing it. There were 24 violent attacks we saw it summer of 2020. What's going to happen?
Yep. I totally agree.
And that gives an excuse for pretty much doing anything they want. And like you said, enough of the population will be asking, or at least okay with it, that they can get away with it.
Well,
and unless they had a clear path, they wouldn't start this, because you can't unring the bell.
Yeah.
Most people live in cities and they'll bend the knee just to survive, to get food and water. So it's going to be a shit show. So I don't know, man. I don't know. I've never seen anything like it, but the stuff the people I'm connected to.
So if the federal government did a study on what happened if there was an electromagnetic pulse attack on the US, which shut down our electric grid, it came out the same day as the 9/11 report. So it got buried. So the federal government's estimate is if you turn off one of the top line things that stunned me was if you turn off the electricity in the United States, they expect a 60% fatality rate for the entire US population within 45 days.
Yeah. Oh,
it's either 45 or 60 days. It's unbelievably fast. It's like 2/3 of the US is dead.
Right. Well, and it depends on the time of year. Like for example, if you turn it off during winter, like it was -13 here. You can stay in the basement with fires on, and
200 people froze to death in Texas last year when the electric grid failed.
Yeah. Well, they did that. Do you guys remember 10 or 12 or 15 years ago when the electric grid went down, and they claim it was a squirrel that burrowed through something, and it showed the weakness. It went from the entire Eastern Seaboard all the way out to Ohio. Do you guys remember that? I was in New York City, and people were so cool, but the grid was down for like 5 to 2 weeks, 5 days to 2 weeks. And they expected people to rape, pillage, kill. And actually New York was like, I was in New York City at the time, and people were like outside hanging out, barbecuing. Like, it was amazing how people did not react as predicted, but for an extended period of time. And so the no baby food thing was a test, and people were freaking out. And yeah, I mean, an electromagnetic, all they have to do, hey, you guys, we don't need 5G. You know who needs 5G? AI. So all these towers, it's open air microwave. If they send a pulse out, your brain is going to fry just like the bumblebees. So, we might even not even know it. Love you all. Maybe I'll not be here next week, but yeah, it's such deep water, and there's so much collusion. It's astounding. So I don't get why people, well, the pandemic was a test and it was a psyop, and you see the results of that. People just laid down, man, for the most part. They bought into it. It's the first time in history healthy people were told to stay indoors, and people said, okay. It made no sense, and it still doesn't make sense. And, and then they got to experiment on people by the millions and millions. And I'm in the health industry, and the test results are being suppressed, and it's diabolical. It's freaking unbelievable. There's white pages now that say the effectiveness of all the vaccines are up to 8 weeks tops, but the side effects last a lifetime. So, and they're making quadrillions and billions and zillions of amounts of money, and people are being forced in entire countries and states all around the world to continue to be test dummies instead of rats. So anyway, it's wild. But, you know, Pfizer's president said, imagine the compliance if we could put microchips in our drugs. So coming attractions, folks. Ha!
Well,
Then
here's
you have
I
Manchurian Candidate.
I just heard a report that Google has, one of Google's employees kind of blew the whistle and was immediately disappeared because the AI he was working on went sentient.
When sentient? What does that mean, Richard?
It means it became self-aware. We're talking about, you know, Terminator level, you know,
Yeah,
Skynet stuff.
right. Well, that's already, that's part of the plan, man. I mean, they already have forget it. I mean, it's all the sci-fi movies are disclosure. It's not just, oh, wow, that was so weird. They have to disclose in order to move forward. And they do it through entertainment and the newest, what is it called? Hypnosis and mind control called the news.
That's why I don't watch that shit.
Exactly. I don't even have TV. There's nothing live in my house anymore, except for this Zoom and internet. Who needs it? Then they're testing all of that stuff. You remember the Nielsen reports? That was all precursor stuff. I mean, they could track your eyes in 1940 and nobody, you know, Facebook, I call Facebook FBI, FBI. Zuckerberg sold us out and works with FBI since like 2 years after he launched. So they've been face tracking us for 20 years since the inception. It's all thought it was free. Nothing's free, and our freedom is at stake in every possible way. So if you know any young people that are willing to stand up and fight, be good to.
No, they're too busy on TikTok, which is China's secret weapon.
Yeah, well, and even Facebook. Some of the people at Facebook admitted to the dopamine and the mind control, and they all got fired. But yeah, it's mind bending in terms of what's going down. You know, I don't know. I don't know. I don't
All right.
know.
Well, let's leave it there, and we will.
Really, thank you for catching us, because I was about to go down that damn drain.
I know.
Maybe a
Yeah.
little pick me up before we wrap.
I know.
There is a solution somehow. There's a solution
Chris-
somehow.
But my
Chris has his
whole,
hand up too. I don't know
my
if you
whole
see
point-
that, John.
What was that, Gwen?
Chris has his hand up. I don't know if you saw that or not.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think he was already out. Did you have something else, Chris? I think he already talked to.
Okay.
But my whole point to this was there's going to be a lot of change coming, good, bad, otherwise doesn't really matter. But change causes conflict. Conflict causes problems, and there's a lot of money in solving problems. So the whole point to it all was keep your eyes peeled and look for solutions, whether you provide them or not. If you don't provide them, that's perfectly fine. See if you can position yourself to be the middleman or the middlewoman and make some money in the middle. There's going to be a lot of money made.
Yeah, food, water, and off-grid energy.
Yeah, there will be a lot of money made in the near future from problems that, you know, hadn't existed in the past. So just keep your eyes peeled. You know, this act is about identifying profitable markets, profitable segments, and they come and go. So I think there's just going to be some new ones coming down the pipe. I don't know what they are, but I know they're going to reveal themselves if you're looking. So keep your eyes peeled, make some money in unique and odd ways, whatever it is. So, all right, guys, we'll have a great week and we will talk to you next week.
Beam me up. Talk to
See ya.
you.
See you later.
Okay.
Ciao, people.
Bye. Thanks, John.
Bye-bye.